Welcome to this episode of AWS GenAI Live. My name is Brian Terry, and I'm a senior solution architect, a partner solution architect here at AWS, focusing on partners that help with migrations to AWS Bedrock. And I'm here with my good friend, Parajad. How you doing today, Parajad?
I'm doing great, Brian. I'm super excited, and this is my second week on GenAI Live. And I'm Parijat Awasthi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. And I'm also a senior partner solution architect, just like Brian Terry, and just like most of you, I'm deeply passionate about building things using GenAI, using the power of GenAI. So
Yeah,
happy to be here today.
awesome. Awesome. And for the audience, if this is your first time joining us, we're super happy that you're here. You can join us every Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And Pacific time. So if you want to learn about the latest and greatest in Gen AI, this is the place to be. So, Paragon, I know there's a lot of cool things that happen in Gen AI, especially AWS. What have you seen this week?
Yeah, absolutely. And before that, I would just share some of my musings. So uh, I was just yesterday I was reflecting upon when GenAI started, what was the state of the maturity of GenAI. So things were like it had very small context window. It used to hallucinate a lot, right? Uh, but
Mm,
then I realized that it wasn't too long ago, right? It was probably like a year or a year and a half ago. But so if you look at it from that point of view, it's not a lot of time. But in the Gen AI years, just like the dog years, it's a lot of time because things are evolving at such a rapid pace. It almost sounds like a cliche when we say that things are changing faster than ever. So yeah. So this week also, a few announcements. Not really the announcements, but the updates. So Amazon Bedrock. Yeah, we're not reinvent. so Amazon Bedrock RAG evaluation is now GA. So what it does is it can help you. It can now evaluate both Bedrock knowledge bases and the custom RAG systems using LLM as a judge methodology. And the
mm,
evaluation, it covers the important aspects like retrieval quality and end-to-end generation, measuring things like relevance, correctness, and whether the model is hallucinating or not. So we have come a long way in a short period of time. And on the Nova side of things, Nova, which is our foundation model, Amazon's, so we have expanded the choice for tools options in the Converse API, and this update gives the developers more flexibility in building complex and sophisticated AI application. And this also allows the models to better determine when to use tools to fulfill the user requests. So I think it's going to come quite handy in the new thing, which is agents.
Oh yeah, yeah, really. I think this is really cool.
Yeah.
So what do you think this will fit in as far as like new developments in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the right now there are, new developments. It's basically, I think how this it's evolving is, making things more in a more like plug and play, so that you
Mm,
have to do less heavy lifting in integrating your tools. So for example, in this case, like Nova, take example of Nova, right? So you will require less heavy lifting in integrating your tools with the LLMs, and with the advent of MCP, model context protocol. So it makes it even more easier to integrate the other applications or the agents into your LLM workflow. And on the RAG evaluation, again, it makes it even more, we are moving few steps further in the in the direction of making uh, no or low hallucination in our correct higher in factual correctness in our responses from the LLMs, foundation models.
wow, that's
Yeah.
very cool. I'm super excited about MCP. I've been using it for the last month or so, and I think it's going to be one of the next big tools. So I'm super excited to
Yeah.
see that we're going that direction.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah. So and what have you got, Brian? So any updates on exciting big things happening in AWS?
Yeah. I'm super excited to announce that our summits are coming up just around the corner. I think we're going to kick it off in London, which is going to be April 30th, and then followed by the DC summit. Unfortunately, I won't be at the London summit, but there may be a possibility I may show up at that DC summit. For the audience, this is an awesome place where you can go and learn about the latest and greatest in AWS. And we may be coming to your town, or at least somewhere close to where you can actually come out, learn about these latest and greatest technologies, and possibly just meet me or Parajohn. So if
Yeah,
you get one of the summits, feel free to just come up to me, say hello, shake hands, we can talk Gen AI or whatever.
yeah, absolutely. We would love to, meet in person at these summits and, talk about all things that we just do here online. We'll be happy to do that in person as well at the summits.
Yeah, super excited. So, this been another episode of Gen AI Live. We will be talking to partners about the latest and greatest in Gen AI, and I'm super excited about today's show. I think we have a couple of good guests that are actually going to maybe show some demos and show some real cool things in Gen AI.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so let's bring our
Yeah,
next, first guest basically for today. I think that's
all right,
HCL.
let's bring him in. So, how about you introduce yourself to the audience?
I'm all good. Thanks for having me, Brian and Parijat. And good morning, good evening, everyone on the call.
All right, nice to have you.
Yeah, happy to have
Thanks.
you,
So,
Majan.
Yeah,
yeah,
thanks.
yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of your company and the things that you guys do. And I'm always excited to speak with innovative companies that are in the space. So tell us a little bit about your company and what you do as your organization.
Okay, so let me introduce myself first. Then I will talk about what we are doing in HCLTech. So I'm Bhajandeep Singh. I work for HCLTech and I lead Generative AI Center of Excellence, specifically on AWS, part of my role there. As Parjat, you mentioned about the journey of Gen AI in last few years, but I and probably most of the people in this call, they have come from a long journey of their careers. So I have transitioned myself from say data BI to data science, AI, ML, then to the Gen AI now, right? So I have seen all those type of, I would say, challenges, opportunities that have come across the way, and probably will be sharing few of those in the conversation today. Right? And I'm based out of Hyderabad, India. Okay.
I'm super excited to have you here.
Yeah,
Thank you. Uh, yeah.
yeah, and yeah, we know HCL Tech. It's a large GSI, global system
Mm,
integrator. So let's talk about how are you focused, because everybody's focused in GenAI, right? So how is
yeah,
HCL
yeah.
Tech focused in the space of GenAI, and what unique things that you're doing in this space?
Sure, definitely. So as an HCL Tech, there are a lot of cool things we are doing in generative AI, but specifically in this topic, I will touch upon what we are doing as a AWS Center of Excellence that probably I'm leading there, right? So at the core or a center, what we want to achieve, our objective overall is to enable adoption of GenAI for our customers. That's our objective or a problem statement, right? No, customers comes to us in a different ways, right? So some customer excited to use generative AI, so they come, okay, I want to do something in the agentic AI. Please build a use case for me, right? Few customers, few conversation happens, they have a very specific use case and they want us to implement that. So that is little more comfortable in that space perspective. We know some problem statement and we want to implement that, right? Depending on the maturity of customer, one of our banking customers, so they have their own data scientist team, right? So all previous journey of data science ML set up properly. Now they want to leverage GenAI for more process improvement and other stuff, right? So then we did a collaborative work with them. So that is one another part of our engagement with the customers, working with their teams to do a collaborative solution for them, right? So this is different way, either proactive, reactive, or I would say hybrid of all these things. We get opportunity for our customers or from our customers, but why the customer should trust us? What is that pillars from a competency perspective we have in our stack, right? That's where our Gen AI Center of Excellence works toward those pillars of competency building, right? So one part of that is creating proactive solutions or assets, ready to deploy assets. It could be industrialized domain-based asset, maybe some horizontal as well, which could be repeatedly used for process improvement, right? So based on that, we create a predefined solution because when customer comes with a very straightforward statement, they want to see something in the AI, Gen AI or agentic AI, we should have some solution to showcase that, demonstrate that capability. That's where proactively, not just a very straightforward technical demonstration, we try to give a domain wrapper or a flavor to that so that it becomes end-to-end use case that we can talk about, right? So we work towards creating that repository, and probably we'll be talking few of that in our conversation today, right? Second part of that is about the lab setup or offering lab as a service, right? Wherein customer want to do a quick POC, right? So we enable that in our lab. And again, thanks to Amazon for their credits and funding mechanism that make us innovate a little faster in that space, right? So we are a little more, I would say, little more faster in innovating in that speed. Otherwise, it's very tough without that support, right? So we're thankful to Amazon for that. Third part of that, third pillar is that as we are building that, as we're deploying that, right? So what else we are doing where customer will trust us? So that's where we are putting our products or a solution on Amazon Marketplace. So we have few offering on the Amazon Marketplace, as well as we are writing blogs, technical blogs, collaboratively with Amazon technical folks as well. So that is another pillar we work proactively to ensure we have those credentials with us so that our customer trust us and work with us for a joint adoption of generative AI. One other aspect that I would like to highlight, again inspired by Amazon, is the GenAI hackathons. So what has happened? We ourselves has participated when it was initial days, right? So Amazon has conducted GenAI hackathons for their customer across region. We have participated in Bangalore, India. We have participated in New Zealand, Australia, and most of those our team did win that, right? Because of the competency we were carrying, or I will say early adoption of GenAI we have shown in our teams, right? But it was just not about winning or participating in that hackathon, but there were a lot of fruits or inspiration to get from that. When we see teams working closely in a limited time manner to solve a particular problem, three or four minds working together for a particular solution, you see those outcomes coming out there, right? That thinking process, that use case getting developed in that short time of frame, right? So what happened after that? We have participated, that's fine. But what we have done with the support from Amazon, we have conducted hackathon for verticals within HCLTech. One we did for LSH, another we did for FS. So what was the fruit? So we got set of use cases developed as part of that exercise. And those use cases were from the persons or the team who are actually working for the customers. So they were knowing a little more better what are the problem statement, either the work they are doing, how they can bring efficiency, or overall from a customer domain perspective, they have a better experience out there, better use case out there. So with that, we are able to get, I would say, those initial food for thoughts that we are able to take back to the customer to do that engagement or interaction with the customers, right? So we are working on all these pillars as part of our competency or our credentials to ensure we are helping our customers for their GenAI adoption, specifically on AWS. So that's what we are doing, Rajat, in this way.
That's super
Awesome.
interesting. So the customers that you work with, are they new to Gen AI, or are some of these customers at a point where they've had a Gen AI application or maybe they're looking to migrate to AWS? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So it is mixed. I would say we have a different level of maturity of the customer that comes to us, and that's how we talk to them accordingly, right? So I was giving one example where, say, one customer came, right? So they said, we just want to leverage Agentic AI. It's not like they are new to GenAI or probably new to ML as such, but they don't have a specific use case to frame, right? So then we ideated, one part of that was hackathon outcome and other stuff, where we probably want to ensure we have a problem statement in place. We define some KPIs, right? So that we are actually helping to solve some problem out of it. It's just not like we want to leverage any develop something that is not fruitful later on, right? So we put some effort and we call it as a ID pad, wherein you identify and define, basically identify the problem statement and define the key objective out of that. Then you do a pad, your launch pad, which is basically prototype, assess, and decide whether you really want to go ahead to make it a production grade system or not, right? So IDPad as a methodology we adopt to guide our customers to understand their problem statement, take it forward, right?
Yeah.
That is one set of customers where we are ideating on their problem statement. And second set of customer where they have their mature team. So I was telling about one of the example, and I have pasted that link as well. We did a joint collaborative solution. We have fine-tuned LLM models to enhance their API testing. This is for banking customer in Australia, right? So it was joint development along with the data scientist team. So they were matured customer. Data sciences team has their vision. They want to collaborate with HCLTech to develop that solution for them. So that's how that collaboration has happened. So it's a varying maturity, Brian, to answer your question. It's not like one or other set of customers. So depending upon how the customers are coming to us and what is their ask, or if we are proactively taking few use cases to them, so we'll basically materialize our talk to them accordingly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So do you have some kind of, assessment framework using which you identify that, okay, if the client is asking you to build XYZ use case, so will that be built using a traditional AI ML, or, it could be as simple as just doing some analytics, or might require AI ML or Gen AI, right? So,
Yeah.
so how do you, go about qualifying that what is the right approach to solve that use case?
Yeah, definitely. See, let's take one step back, right? Let's first understand that evolution of generative AI, because that will probably help us to put this use case or this thought process in right frame, right? So if you look back, few years back, what was the, I'm just trying to understand, in your opinion, what was the tech word before generative AI storm? What was that we were talking about? Any guesses, Parijat or Brian? Before Gen AI, what was we were talking in ML field?
Yeah, I think it was predominantly about AI and ML, and I'm talking in the space of AI and ML, so basically predictive AI, those kind of things. So, but then Gen AI came and felt like Gen AI is silver bullet,
Mm.
is the magic
Right.
pill for all the problems.
Yeah, just to add that, right? So just I'm taking one part of that. ML is a big field, right? So ML ops was the key differentiator, right? So ML ops, either cloud providers having that feature as a service, differentiator. Technical consultants have that as a feature, it was differentiator, right? Or even service companies in that sense, right? So MLOps was the field where we were basically taking it as a differentiator to our customers, right? So then we have seen the evolution of GenAI in terms of starting with, you have mentioned that earlier, right? The hallucination and all that journey that has happened till agentic AI we are talking now, right? But in this whole fields, there were three, I call it as a CTC impact. CTC is not cost to company. It is three stakeholders who got impacted by this evolution, right? So one is C is customer, T is for tech consultant, and third C is cloud providers, right? I will not say impact, but they have to do something to be on speed with this evolution, right? As a customer, they started thinking maybe of the competition fear and other stuff. They really want to do something in the GenAI field, whatever the evolution has happened. Earlier it was RAG-based use cases. Now they are talking about agentic AI use cases. So they want to be with the pace, the way technology is evolving, right? Second part, tech consultant. Though again, a lot of questions. People have spent a lot of time learning data science, ML ops concept, and all stuff. Suddenly, you see prompt engineering and other fields coming up, and they started, oh, but what are my skills? What should I do now? Questions. I will come back to this question and answer that. Third is cloud provider. Now, if you look, I will talk from Amazon perspective. If you compare the tech stack before GenAI and after GenAI, what has happened? What is the change? So Amazon has very beautifully placed or embedded Amazon Bedrock along with Amazon SageMaker and overall ecosystem, right? This is not separate GenAI stack at all. It is the embedded tech stack that is there along with other AI services, other ML services, right? Parallel to Amazon SageMaker. If the cloud providers didn't change or probably built it from scratch, they are embedding it with the ML services, it means there is a meaning to that, right? And that applies to the tech consultant as well. If you have a skill, data science skills, don't worry. I mean, whoever is in the audience here, from that perspective, you have to complement that. And I will give examples of that, how it is complementing overall, right? Now we have seen that today's stack of Amazon Bedrock along with SageMaker, it sits together along with other services, right? Now your question, how we are assessing that use case, or how we are building those use case that complement these services together. Take example of our traditional use case, say fraud detection, right? I will take that example. Fraud detection, what we usually used to do, we detect a fraud, right? It says, okay, with some probability, real time, most of your false positive will be there, but still it says this transaction is basically flagged as a fraud, right? What after that? So if there are a question how to explain that fraud, there is silence. They have to do a lot of manual check here and there to figure it out what has happened behind the scene, right? Though there were some sense of explainability in the model, still it's not that great, right? So how we can take that further to develop it end to end, right? So fraud detection is now complemented by GenAI services. We call it as a fraud investigator, right? You take transaction. Now you have ability to take your agentic AI decisions, go on different set of sources, maybe transaction details, maybe merchant details, maybe live flag of blacklisted IPs and all that stuff, right? You do all that agentic AI solution behind the scene and come up with a very good report which says why this particular transaction is flagged as fraud or why it should not be flagged as a fraud, right? Now if you go back and answer your customers, yes, you have a definitely very much good details. So your ML and GenAI are complementing each other to enable that original fraud detection system in a much better way. So it's complementing that. Now you cannot just go back and change the fraud detection just with the GenAI. That may not be giving a good fruit, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, yeah. Second part of that is say asset maintenance, right? Now asset maintenance again, it's like we were predicting something remaining useful life or whatever other target variables were there, right? Again, there was questions. You have taken few features and you have given one target for that, right? Whether it's there or not, or what is the remaining life. But what after that? How you will govern what has happened behind the scene to give that decision, right? That's where you complement again explainability. That is one part of it. Second part is now if say we are fixing some asset, the life of your field engineer, right? Now he's probably writing some notes or recording, doing some conversation with people out there. But that was never recorded. It was just their conversation only for that asset fixed, done. But now with generative AI, you can log that conversation. You can actually make a SOP out of that. That's the power of generative AI. So our traditional asset maintenance or a prediction is now changing. Now it's evolving because you are able to learn from the fixes as well. Because
Right.
you are able to record that transaction, generate insights from that, and keep it for future references as well. So
Yeah.
that's how it's complementing. I would say ML plus GenAI together working, enabling that end-to-end workflow and also probably enhancing our traditional prediction cases as well.
Yeah. So basically, with the advent of GenAI, now you're able to think of the potential use cases or unlock those use cases which you were not even thinking about in the in the past, right? Before Gen.
Yes.
That's really a great insight. And let's quickly talk about some use cases that as a CEO you might you talked about. You build the offers and the assets, right, for the client. So
Yes.
is there anything
Yeah.
that you would want us to want to walk us through, or the audience like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Let me bring my screen. Good. Okay. So, Parjit, you're able to see the navigation, right,
Yeah.
of my screen? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is primarily our catalog, though we have another which is yet not listed. But if you see, we have primarily divided into two frames, right? So one is for a particular industry, if that use case cater to a particular industry, or maybe for a particular business function, maybe HR and whatever other component we have, right? If I talk from a perspective of one of the use case we have built, and this is very much reusable for our LSH customers, right? So what we are doing for a particular use case, right, or solution in that way. Very first thing, as I was mentioning, we just don't go and develop anything like that. So we first want to understand. Now this has come from a knowledge of our domain expert, right? Then probably little matured after our conversation with the customers, but they have seen what has happened in this process, the manual reporting of adverse events. What is case intelligence, right? It is basically automating case intake, which is leveraged for amplified pharmacovigilance, which is basically to ensure assessment or understanding of any adverse event that is reported across multiple channels, right? So this is like variety of data coming from different channels and how we are able to streamline that process so that it is consumed by our target systems accordingly. Okay, so there are challenges. It's manual anyways. You have to monitor multiple channels together. No, not feasible. Not feasible in the sense it's time consuming effort, right? And with that, we might be missing key details. Okay, so what is the approach? Definitely, one part of that is IDP. And again, I was telling, we do leverage traditional AI services embedded that way or infuse generative AI to make it more meaningful, right? So we are leveraging different services for extraction and also enabling generative AI to support end-to-end entity identification out of that. So let me explain technical architecture of this. So it's an application. Let me go back. Okay. If you see here, right? So
Mhm.
LLM is only part here, but it is not whole ecosystem, right? The way it sits in Amazon tech architecture or a stack, same way here. When you are building any solution, this is just, I would say, the wedges of a wrap, but wrap is not complete without all ecosystem in place. Either it could be from your UI application perspective, it may be the data pipeline we are creating. So in this case, we are reading from multiple channels, right? So adverse event reported by patient could be via email, maybe handwritten PDF, maybe reported via social media communication, whatever it could be, right? So we have adapter to listen from each channel and extract data according to the channel or to the respective source of that, right? So we are creating robust pipeline to ensure we are able to read through different channels, and this leverages different AI services of our overall tech stack. Okay, so we have some inputs or some raw data or some identification done here, and we are now infusing generative AI, leveraging its power to identify those entity in a much better way. So we are using taxonomy here, defining what all different set of formatted outcome we want to get out of this text we have extracted or information we have extracted, right? Then fed further for downstream application, as well as we have I would say UI screens wherein the expert could see it and take a decision whether they want to pass it through or they want to flag it for learning of our system, right? But overall, end to end, it's just not about leveraging LLM to create end-to-end solution. We have to leverage all the components. That's how we actually develop each solution we are getting in our lab or developing for our customers. We tend to think how we can leverage whole ecosystem to ensure the solution is complete in its workflow. Okay. Now, if we take it further, what happens right now? This is just not one part of it. It becomes actually our reusable artifact. Why? Because framework is common. We could leverage this across different industries. Domain may change. The what we want to extract, what we want to identify, what we want to send further, or what action we want to take, right? All that may change across industries, but overall framework is reusable, right? That's why we call it as a reusable solution, just not for a same industry, though we have used it for multiple LSH customers, but still it is also reusable across different industries as well. So that is our thought process to develop any solution we are ensuring we have all these details so that we have a problem statement, as I mentioned, we have KPIs, so we have our ecosystem that works together to do end-to-end solution.
This is super interesting. I love the idea of you guys like having these cases and then also the architecture. And I love the fact that it's kind of a plug-in architecture. So we have a few minutes left in this interview. Where can we find out more information about your products and even some other solutions you're building?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we'll take example of EV assist, right? So this is again made for auto industry. Let me see if it is somehow. Okay.
So is the information about this particular asset, is it available on AWS or HCL website?
Yes. So most of these, so at least for we are publishing it on. I'm not sure if you're able to see my screen when I'm moving. Okay, let me
Uh,
Yes.
try.
we're still seeing that. Yeah, now we see that.
Oh, yeah.
The AWS.
Yeah.
So this, okay. So this is another one, AutoWise Companion, that is like a joint collaborative blog and also a solution listed on our portal as well. We have developed with Amazon team, right? So if you see again the overall perspective of it, right? So we are solving a problem of or anxiety of person buying a particular auto, as well as the insights that OEMs are getting, complementing that, right? And if you look from a architecture and a flow perspective, so this is very complex architecture in that way. But if you see here, right? So here we are leveraging one of the power of generating text to SQL, right? And from a different way, we have a data sources, leveraging that calls to enable text to SQL and then take a decision based on that. Right? Along with that,
Yeah.
we also have some unstructured data, which is your quarterly reports or quality reports that are basically fetched by OEMs to take
Yeah, this is super exciting, and I love the fact that it's in our AWS blog. So, the audience, if you want to find out more information about this architecture or more about their products, please visit our AWS GenAI blog. So, thank you so much for being on this episode, and I think we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with our next guest. So, stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to this episode of GenAI Live, where you can find out about the latest and greatest in AWS GenAI solutions and partners. So I'm here with my good friend Parajad. Parajad, how about you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Parijat Awasthi. I'm a senior partner solution architect at AWS. I'm based in Dallas. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. It's an exciting week today, exciting show today, and looking forward to hear from our next guest.
All right. Now, if it's your first time joining us, we're happy that you're here. But you can join us every Wednesday at 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time. So if you want to learn about the latest and greatest in Gen AI, this is the place to be. So with no further ado, we're going to bring our next guest, and we're going to talk about something really exciting in Gen AI. Hello, how are you?
How's it going, Brian? How's it going, Prajat? Nice to meet you all.
Great,
Going
great.
well.
Super excited to have you here. How about you introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Neil Gokhale. I'm a solution architect at Cohere. We're a large language model company. We're also have the pleasure of hosting a bunch of our models on AWS. Strong partnership with the technology. So great to meet you guys. Excited to be on.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think tell us about what Cohere does. It's a large language model. You have command, uh, and I think we are here to talk about the embedding models,
Yeah. Yeah, we're here
re-ranking
to talk
stuff.
about
Yes.
search retrieval, which is a very sort of focused topic. I actually have a deck to bring up so we can kind of walk through all the cool stuff we're doing at Cohere and how we're integrating with AWS. Awesome. So that's up there. So as I mentioned, talk's going to be about search retrieval. Search retrieval is a big part of generative AI, especially, and I know we're all kind of into space. We've built RAG solutions. This is a key component in that. So that's what we're going to be focused on. Before we get to that, though, I think it's fair to maybe introduce the company and what we also do. So Cohere started in 2019, but I think it's fair to kind of take it back to 2017. That's when our co-founder, Aidan Gomez, co-authored the paper called "Attention is All You Need." It was the seminal paper that started this generative AI craze. It's the reason for the T in GPT because it introduced the transformer architecture. And we've been on this crazy ride since then. At this point, we're about 400 employees deep, spread across many different geographies. We have 4 offices in Toronto, San Francisco, New York, and London. So we're kind of spread out throughout the globe. And a big part of the reason is, and it's also the reason why we're known for in this extremely competitive generative AI space, is our focus on enterprise generative AI. So how can we offer our models, which we build ourselves, to enterprises so that they can enable and unlock generative AI capabilities. So our models, and you'll see the 3 that we're kind of focused on the most today are up there. So we have the chat model, which is the generative model. That's our command family. We also have embed and rerank. And rerank is actually going to be the focus of today's talk track because it's such a unique model that we offer. And it's state-of-the-art in search retrieval. So we also focus on things like customization and multilinguality. Customization is fine-tuning all the way down to pre-training and really like making these models domain-specific. And obviously the deployment capabilities. So we're accessible through Bedrock, all the models you see here. But we can also deploy them through VPC or any EC2 instance or even SageMaker. So we want that adaptability in the instance that our customers need to be on a particular deployment option. Cool. So moving on, let's talk about search retrieval. When we think of RAG, and I know at this point we've all built RAG pipelines, there's two components. There's retrieval and then there's the generation. And I think the focus of this industry so far has been fixated on the generative models. They get bigger and better. At this point, it feels like a new model comes out every week. We have reasoning models now. So these generative models are getting much more capable. At the same time, what we found out very early on is that RAG is all about retrieval as well. So you want to place as much importance on how you're getting the data and how you're searching for it, along with how you're generating content based on that data. So for today, for once, I kind of just want to focus on retrieval and how we can make it better. So your RAG pipeline can ultimately be better. So there's a few steps, right? And we might have already tried these out, right? So you can introduce semantic retrieval. This is as simple as bringing in an embedding model. So you can use embed, which is one of our models. You can also improve the searchability of your documents. So if you have raw text, you have PDFs, you have unstructured, structured content, you can turn them into chunks if you want. You can add metadata to improve the searchability. There's many things you can do. And both of these things are equally important. But now let's think about how we can make it even better, right? So the first two options help the recall of the search. So recall is a function of bring me the most amount of documents relevant. But sometimes you need precision. So precision means get me the most relevant document that can answer this question. And that's what rerank can help you do. Rerank, when you bring rerank into your search stack, and it's a very easy plug and play sort of import, it helps you balance the search recall as well as the precision so that you are getting the best possible search for your downstream generative workflow. And that's essentially the point of including it into your search stack. The way rerank works under the hood is, it's pretty simple to think about it. It's a specialized large language model, so it still uses the transformer architecture. What you pass into rerank is a bunch of your documents. So these can be articles, chunks from a PDF, rows from a CSV, anything of that sort. And you also pass a search query. So this is what you're looking for. Maybe it's a question from a user. And you pass those into rerank, rerank 3.5. And then what it does is it assigns a score to each of those documents, which is calculated through that transformer mechanism. This score is called a relevant score. And you can sort on this relevant score to find the most relevant documents. So you see at the end, what will end up actually happening is that documents that were further below through your first pass retrieval actually end up going higher because the precision of those or the relevance of those documents is much higher. And by doing so, you incorporate this idea of ranking, which ends up becoming a second step to your search retrieval. All right. So why use rerank, right? I think that's the big question here. So we'll look at it in terms of two aspects. So if you're looking at just search, right? So you have a search bar somewhere in your website or you have a search bar in your product. Rerank unlocks complex query retrieval while improving relevance. So what I mean by that is, let's say I'm on a website that helps me find restaurants in my local area. And I go to the search bar and I type, find me pizza. So that's something you could have done with traditional search. When you incorporate rerank in there, you can actually make your query a lot more complex. So I can actually ask for something like, find me the closest pizza restaurants to my location, which have a very quiet ambiance. They serve good Italian food, and they're not too far away, and they have reviews starting 2019. That search query, verbatim in natural language, I can actually throw into a search bar, and rerank will do the job in terms of surfacing the results that are the most accurate. Now, thinking about RAG, how you can incorporate rerank is your second step retrieval. So once you've found your initial passive documents, whether it's through an embedding model or through hybrid search, rerank can then rank these documents, and then you can pass them into your prompt. And you can actually add an instruction in your prompt saying that, hey, when I pass these documents in here in your context, note that the higher they are, the more relevant they are to this question. So knowing that, the language model can actually pay more attention to those when answering a user question. So I'll pause here. Brian, are there any questions before we move on to a demo?
So basically, what it does is, just for our viewers. So semantic search gets you the relevant results, and re-rank gets you the most relevant results. In the
Absolutely.
in the absolute simplest term.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good way to put it. So typically, semantic search helps you bump up the recall of your search queries, which means get me the most, if not all, the documents that are relevant. And re-rank will help you narrow down the precision of that search. So re-rank is actually used in conjunction with semantic search. You don't have to pick one over the other. When they're used together, they actually end up becoming very powerful.
So, and I assume this sits on top of the existing embedding model, any application might have. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you could still have an embedding model working in your search stack. You throw in re-rank at the end of that search stack, and yes, it can still work.
So from the outcome standpoint, have any kind of benchmarks, like it improves your accuracy of the search results by X percentage or something?
Yeah. So I think we're in the space of benchmarks. So we can definitely share blog posts that have those concrete numbers. What we actually talk about is what we heard from our customers that are using re-rank. So Notion and they are using re-rank via AWS. They actually saw a massive bump in the searchability of their documents. So if you have Notion and you use that in your organization and you use their search bar, it uses re-rank under the hood to find documents that are the most relevant, which you can assume is actually a pretty effective task, because think about it, Notion documents can be structured anyway, and they can have any type of information in them. And they can be pretty deep in your document store. So surfacing these documents that I care about is extremely important for a user, which is why having a search solution like re-rank really helps. And we've also seen it in many situations where customers come to us with a RAG pipeline with just semantic retrieval or just a BM25 sparse retrieval mechanism, and their biggest issue is that they're not getting the right documents, and the answers of the model that are equally bad. So we introduce re-rank, and that is able to get them a bump in the performance.
Yeah, absolutely. So in fact, as an enterprise search user, my preference would be that if I search in any search for anything in the most natural language possible, I should be able to get the result as the first URL, right? That this is your result, right? You don't have to further go down. And that if I get that using re-rank, I think that's going to tremendously improve the overall experience of the user.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to showcase through the demo.
Speaking of that, like, what kind of performance do you get out of this, like doing this re-ranking and then the searching?
Yeah, so I think performance is twofold, right? So you can think about quality as well as latency, right? So those are two metrics that people care about a lot. Quality, I say that because now, let's think about RAG, for example. You don't have to pass 100 documents to get solid quality results. You can actually maybe scope that down to the top 30 or the top 20 after you've passed it through re-rank, because now you know that the re-rank has surfaced the most precise documents in terms of relevance. So in terms of quality, your language model, which now has to read through all the documents before answering a question, there's less of that they have to actually do. And they can actually focus on getting the right answer out there. And that also impacts latency, right? So again, you have less tokens that the model has to consume because you're passing a smaller number of documents. And by doing so, you can easily incorporate a lot of changes in efficiency as well as latency.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds really promising. So let's see.
Yeah, cool. Why don't we move on to a very short demo? So I have two things to kind of show. In both cases, you'll see how you can actually incorporate multi-aspect queries, which are complex queries beyond just single word terms. So I'm going to go to the Amazon clothing catalog. What this is essentially a direct comparison between a lexical search system. So that's something very similar to a Google search, a BM25, which most organizations use today in a pretty basic search stack. And then on the other hand, you have re-rank. So we're going to compare the results head to head with the same search term and see how rerank makes a difference. So what I'm going to search for very quickly is shoes for formal business events for men. So it is a multi-aspect query because I'm not only asking for shoes, but I'm asking for a specific type of event, and I'm assigning a gender to the query as well. So if that information is contained within any text related to the product, it should be able to surface the right documents. So I'm going to hit search, and you'll see that if you do the lexical search, these are definitely not shoes I'd wear. I don't know, Parajat and Brian, if you disagree, but I'm not pulling up any business with these, nor am I going to pull up with this. So there is some limitations, right? So now I'm going to run rerank, and let's see what we get. And you'll see this doesn't have an image here, but the first few results, and actually I'll keep scrolling, but they are shoes that I'd be comfortable wearing. The other interesting thing is that if you look at this number over here, so this is the number, or this is the index that it was ranked at with a typical lexical search. And by applying rerank, it's actually bumped it up all the way to 1. So now if I scroll down to 296, which is way far down here, you'll actually see that it's the same term. And that's because rerank is actually scoping them up because it cares about the exact relevance to this query. Same thing. So now if I hit another search term, so a casual blazer for women with a checks pattern. Again, multi-aspect. I'm going to hit search. You'll see that this is what looks like a cardigan. And then you have blazers here, but they don't have that pattern. I'm going to hit rerank. It's going to take a second to go through the results. And you'll see that the first few, or the first 2 results are exactly what I need. So that's what I care about, right? Ultimately, as a user, if I'm going to use a website with a rerank back search, I care about the first 2 or 3 results, and that's it. So adding rerank there makes sure that you are getting that to the customer as soon as possible. And that's where it's strong. Now, let's think about things like logical reasoning within a query. So I'm going to flip over to another product search. And let me just make this a bit bigger so it's easier to see. And I'm going to run a few different search queries. So I'm going to search for shoes. And this is a single term search query. So it's just one word. And I'm comparing just an embeddings-based search on this side and an embeddings-based search plus rerank on the other side. So this is what we're talking about, Parajat, when we combine those 2 solutions together. On the one hand, because it's a very simple search term, you'll actually see that the search results are pretty similar. But now when I start incorporating complexity in the search, so I'm going to say shoes for women which are less than $80. So I'm assigning a numerical reasoning step. I'm also assigning a gender. And when I search for that, you'll see that these search results are okay, but then some of them on just the semantic search side, they're actually more than $80. So if I keep going, same thing kind of here. But now if I go on the other side with the rerank results, you'll see that they're consistently under $80. And again, all we're feeding into these models is the text you see here, is the description text over here. But it's able to do multi-aspect reasoning, and it always ensures that the results that you get are the most precise. And I don't need to do any sort of metadata filtering or whatever to get that result. I just need to type it in natural language and get the results that I need. So that brings us to the end of the demo. Hopefully that kind of exemplifies why it's an important solution and an important piece to add in your search stack, whether it's RAG or whether it's simple search.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So when you showed the first example and you said, hey, maybe these shoes are not something we're looking to, but somehow my taste changed. I'm sure that this dynamically updates, based on my taste and that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
So, I mean, like if you wanted to ask it something else, like throw on another little bit of logic at the end of that, you can. Yeah. And it all comes down to what you're feeding it. So as long as the documents you're feeding it have some sort of reference for it to latch onto, it can actually magnify those search results and bring them up to the top. In this case, we were asking about price because that's actually something we explicitly pass in the results. And by doing so, we can actually surface them and get them up there.
Yeah. And I believe the applicability of this is not limited to just to like an e-commerce portal like this, but to other applications as well. Like say, for example, if I integrated with the voice assistant, I would be getting more correct, more relevant responses from the voice assistant when I use something like rerank.
For sure, yeah. I think when any use case where you're
Yeah.
explicitly looking for precision,
Yep.
it is a good fit. And once you transcribe your voice into text, throw it into rerank, yes, you should be able to get very precise results with that. Yes.
Got it. So
Awesome.
how can users get started?
Yeah.
AWS users, is it available? Rerank, is it available on Bedrock?
It is, yeah, absolutely. So rerank is easily accessible on Bedrock. You can access it through the API. You can test it on Bedrock as well. It's pretty simple to set up. All you do is you pass your documents. So in text form, you can actually do that very easily. And then throw them into rerank with a search query. It should work right off the bat. And you should be able to easily incorporate it in any RAG pipeline that you're using today with little to no effort.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I guess since we're on the topic of deployments, if there are people that are looking for more, I guess, private deployments, so we talk to a lot of customers that are interested in these models, but they can't let the data go outside their organization, or they want them to be within their AWS enclosure. We can deploy these via SageMaker or even VPC. So if you want dedicated instance of rerank, you can go through SageMaker. But if you want something that is completely air-gapped to your own AWS environment, we can deploy rerank through VPS as well. Both options are completely available.
Awesome. And
Great.
since it works above the embedding model, like the semantic search, so does it introduces any kind of latency in the overall response times or something like that?
That's a good question. So yes, rerank does introduce latency at runtime. So an embedding model, for example, you pre-embed all the documents and you store them into a vector store. So the only thing you're doing ultimately is a comparison, right? So it's cosine similarity. You're calculating that. If you're looking for solutions that incorporate no latency at runtime, an embedding option is really good. Now, tacking on rerank, it's a play of balance, right? Because with rerank, you're actually improving the latency by having to reduce the number of documents you pass into your generative model. So it's less tokens consumed. They can answer it a lot quicker. Now, rerank does add latency because it's another component to the search pipeline. But there are ways to work around it. The simplest way is to actually parallelize your rerank calls. So if you're sending like maybe 500 documents into rerank, you can actually split it into separate rerank calls, run them at the same time, and then combine them at the end, because the relevance score of those documents is always going to be the same, regardless of how you segregate those documents. Because it's a deterministic model, you will always get the same results. So at the end, all you have to do is combine all those results, sort them on that relevance score, and you should have the same exact list. So there's ways to work around that for sure.
Got it.
Great.
And
super exciting stuff.
And I just have one question that, how are your customers using rerank? What are some of the use cases that, you want to talk about?
Yeah,
in
for
their
sure.
device?
I think it falls into two specific categories. So we have customers that are only interested in search, and then we have customers that are looking to improve RAG. So we have many customers that come to us and say, look, like we want to use generative AI. We've started with a semantic-based or hybrid solution, and we just want to make sure that our customers can search for whatever they need to. And at that point, I think we always go in with rerank. It's a really good fit for that sort of solution. Rerank actually works really well with structured and unstructured data, even semi-structured. Like if you're passing JSONs or YAMLs, it'll still do a great job of surfacing them. So I mean, we talked about Notion. Like they have a massive amount of documents. So any Notion sort of organization that uses Notion will have many documents that they store. Different people are going to write different types of documents. I certainly, when I'm writing, I guess, documentation for code versus when I'm writing like a technical report, they're completely different. They're not the same format. None of that's, transferable from one to the other. But I can still trust rerank to surface the right one because it cares about relevance and because it improves precision. So things like that, we always go in with rerank knowing that it's going to be a good fit. On the RAG side, it's always a conversation of what are you looking for, right? So sometimes customers come to us and say that They are using a very rudimentary search stack. They're throwing hundreds of documents at the generative model, and it's just not able to get the right answer. And they have this issue called needle in the haystack, where you fill up the context window of these generative models, and they're growing so big now, right? Like we're at the 256K range. I mean, we have some that are over 1 million at this point. But what happens is when you feed that context window with a lot of text, it's actually upon the model to find the right information within that body of text to get you an answer. So how can we alleviate that burden from the model so that it just focuses on generation? Is we reduce the scope of that context to things that are the most relevant to answer a user question. That's why RAG started, right? And now we're improving it by introducing something like rerank.
Awesome. Yeah, this is super exciting. I guess we have a few minutes left of this interview. Where can we find out more information about rerank and how to use it?
Yeah, so rerank is accessible through Bedrock. We've done we've co-authored a lot of blogs with AWS. There's some links thrown into the chat that I can see that people can reach out to. But yeah, it's super accessible. We'd love for you guys to try it, fit it into your RAG workflows, see how it works. And yeah, it's always effective.
Great. I myself am going to start using this because I think it's really, really useful. Maybe in a lot of things I do, and I'm sure a lot of my partners also.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, as far as rerank, where do you think the next future will be in this technology? I see it's kind of fresh. This is definitely kind of new. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I mean, I think with these language models, it always has been bigger and better. That's the trend. I will say, I think for us, the roadmap for search is to improve precision. Ideally, we want to make sure that a user does not have to care about what's happening underneath, but when they search for a document in the language that they're comfortable with, that they get what they're looking for. So we're going to continue improving on the searchability of the documents. We've also entered the space of combining these different models into full-fledged solutions. So we're focused on that end as well. But you can expect rerank to get even better. And it's already state-of-the-art, but introducing things like logical reasoning, numerical logic, like we showed where it kind of compared below a certain price, above a certain date. Those are things that we really want to nail down. And we actually want to expand the scope of rerank's performance across many different domains. So we want to be the best model in legal. We want to be the best model in HR. And those when you look at different domains, they may have different requirements. They may have different documents, different structures that we need to work with, different like places for importance. So we're just going to try to make the model as good as it can be. So it's an easy sell, right? I think everyone's kind of willing to use it, and then they definitely see the upsides.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, the point that you talked about, Neil, I think it resonates with me, and that's like, models are getting better, bigger, and better. But we also have to pay attention to on this search side of things as well, because industries that you mentioned, like the HR, legal, finding the right information, that's of critical importance, right? So if I get that using something like rerank, so I think that's going to be immensely useful for the enterprises.
Yeah, and we don't just want to get obscenely big with these models. Like at the end of the day, we want these models to be easily deployable and packageable on compute or on private deployment, VPC. So these models have to be containable. So we want to make sure that we're balancing size, performance, efficiency, all those kind of factors come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. Like tuning the other parts of the larger GenAI equation. While obviously, it's important to focus on the big one, tuning the other things, that's equally important.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for this awesome conversation on it. I know a lot of us are going to try this new technology, and thank you for giving us this really cool demo.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. So this has been an awesome episode of GenAI Live. So join us again next Wednesday at 8 a.m. And thank you, Parajad. And thank you
Thank you,
everyone
Brian.
for doing this demo. So see you next time on GenAI Live.
Thank you, everyone.